We are on the record on 23 CF 170 People versus Timothy Bliefnick. Mr. Bliefnick is present in court along with his attorney, Ms. Casey Schnock. People appear by Assistant State's Attorney Josh Jones and Laura Keck. And ladies and gentlemen who are out in the audience, I would again remind you, you are allowed to have cell phones in the courthouse. However, while you are in the courtroom, those cell phones must be turned completely off and put away so they cannot be seen by security, because if your cell phone goes off or security sees you with your cell phone, they're going to ask you to leave and you will not be allowed until the next day. That does not apply to the media, who is allowed to have their cell phones and or other devices out so that they can communicate with the public, but they need to wear the ID badges so that security can determine that they are in fact media, and so that they will not be hassled then by security. And having given that admonishment again, Mr. Jones, are the people ready to proceed?
We are.
And Ms. Schnock, defendant, ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, then let's bring in the jury.
The session of the circuit court is not reconvened. You may be seated.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We are continuing with the prosecution's case in chief. And Mr. Jones, you have additional evidence.
I do, Your Honor. People would call Nick Eddy to the stand.
I'll swear him in. All right. Detective, you'll step to the front of the courtroom. And then raise your right hand, and since you can't see the clerk, I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. All right. If you'll have a seat right over here. Then scoot up to the table to where you're comfortable, bend the microphone in front of you, and then speak towards the microphone, please. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you tell us your name, please?
Nick Eddy.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a detective with the Quincy Police Department.
How long have you done that?
I've been a detective for 5 years, been with the department for about 10.
Now, in that 10 years that you've been in the department, 5 years as a detective, have you received any special training or certification?
Yes.
Can you explain that or tell us about those?
So in my position, I received specialized training in digital evidence area. So I deal a lot with cell phone evidence and being able to read that type of data when it comes in, or any other type of electronic data that we get through courses of investigations.
Fair to say you're the electronic nerd in the Quincy Police Department?
Probably fair, yeah.
I want to talk to you first then about Becky's cell
Okay.
phone. We've heard evidence, and it's been introduced into evidence, the extraction from her cell phone. Did you get a chance as the detective who looks at that type of evidence to review the information from her cell phone?
Yes, I looked at it.
When you reviewed the information from her cell phone specifically, did you look at text messages?
Yes.
And in those text messages, did you review text messages between Becky and Ted Johnson?
Yes.
When you reviewed those text messages, at any point did you see any fights in text message between Becky and Ted?
No,
Any disagreements or arguments between Becky and Ted?
not that I can recall.
In reviewing the text messages on Becky's phone, did you see anyone that Becky had fights or disagreements with over text messages?
No.
Did you see any text messages where Becky said she was scared of anyone?
There were conversations she's had with other people that,
Apart from what we've already heard from other witnesses?
yes. Other than that, no.
I want to talk specifically then about February 23rd, 2023 in Becky's cell phone.
Okay.
On February 23rd, 2023 at 1:11 and 10 seconds, we've heard testimony and seen the evidence about a cell phone call to 91126, correct?
Yes.
After that 1:11 and 10 seconds in the morning, was there any other activity outgoing from Becky's cell phone?
No.
In your role as a detective in this case, were you also involved in the processing of the defendant's car? A search warrant was obtained for his car, and that car was searched, is that right?
Yes.
In that search, were there photographs taken of things that were found?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as People's Exhibits 166 through 170. If I can approach a witness, Your Honor.
You may.
I ask you to look at these from 166 through 170. Tell me when you've had a chance to look through them.
Okay.
Are those photographs that were taken on March 1st, 2023, when the defendant's car was searched?
It would have been March 2nd, but yes, those were photos. Yes.
And I apologize, March 2nd, when his car was searched?
Yes.
Do those photos accurately show what you observed when that car was searched?
Yes.
Your Honor, we'd ask that People's 166 through 170, I believe that's what I said, would be introduced into evidence.
Any objection, Ms. Stock?
No, Your Honor.
They will be admitted, and you may publish them.
Thank you, Your Honor. Of course you did. On the screen now is People's Exhibit 166. Detective Eddie, what are we looking at here?
There's a pair of gloves on the dash.
Where the laser is pointed?
Yes.
And again, just as for the record, the area of the car, this is the defendant's car.
Yes.
And People's 167, please. Can you tell us where we're looking at here?
This would be underneath the driver's seat, the front driver's seat.
And you see a black pair of gloves and a white pair of gloves, is that fair to say?
Yes.
People's 168. Would this be the black pair of gloves that were pulled out from underneath the driver's seat?
Yes.
And 169, the white pair of gloves that were pulled out from beneath the driver's seat?
Yes.
And in the back of the car, People's 170, what are we looking at here?
The rear compartment of the car where there's all these bags sitting there.
Okay.
If I could approach a witness.
You may.
And you would have been marked as People's 222. Is that the only bag that was seized from the back of the defendant?
Yes.
We'd ask that People's 222 be introduced into evidence as well.
Any objection, Ms. Stock?
No, Your Honor.
It will be admitted.
Detective Eddie, in your investigation, did you also receive or apply for and receive a search warrant for a phone app called Our Family Wizard?
Yes.
And specifically, was that search warrant for messages between Becky Bliefnick and the defendant on the Our Family Wizard app?
Yes.
If I can approach a witness.
You may.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as People's 165. Is that the business records affidavit from our family wizard, as well as a CD containing the information that you have requested?
Yes.
And did you view that information?
Yes.
Your Honor, we'd ask that People's 165 be introduced into evidence.
Any objection, Ms. Stock?
No, Your Honor.
165 will be admitted.
Okay.
Going to hand you some photographs that are slides of the messages in 165. Ask you to review those.
Okay.
And are those, in fact, messages that you saw on the Our Family Wizard app, I believe on February 21st, 22nd of 2023, between Becky Bliefnick and the defendant?
Yes.
Your Honor, we'd ask leave to publish those. They've been introduced already under 165, and they're a subset of that information.
You may publish those.
The first slide, Detective, is on February 21st, 2023 at 7:46 p.m. It's a message from Becky Bliefnick to the defendant, and the subject is kids. Is that correct?
Yes.
The message is, are you able to keep the kids tomorrow? I do not feel good today and feeling worse as the night goes on. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was there a response to that message?
There was.
Next slide, please. And on February 21st, 2023 at 8:53 p.m., did the defendant send a message back to Becky Bliefnick, again with the subject, kids?
Yes.
The message is, yes, I can keep them. I assume you're referring to overnight as well, unless something drastic changes tomorrow during the day with how you feel. Correct?
Yes.
And did Becky respond to that?
Yes.
Next slide, please. And at 8:55 on the 21st, Becky sends the defendant a message, correct, overnight, so you would pick them up from school and keep them Wednesday overnight.
Yes.
Next slide, please. And then at 8:55 p.m., the defendant responds to Becky, yes, I can.
Yes.
And then at 8:56, Becky Bliefnick responds to Tim, to the defendant, okay, thanks.
Yes.
I want to move on now and talk to you about a bike that was found, okay?
Okay.
Are you familiar with the blue bike that was found?
Yes.
It was found approximately a half block from the defendant's residence, is that right?
Yes.
Were you involved in the handlebars of that bike being removed and sent for testing?
Yeah, I assisted in that.
They were tested only for DNA, correct?
Yes.
Can you explain to us the thought process behind it? They weren't tested for gunshot residue, they weren't tested for fingerprints. Explain that to me.
We felt that the likelihood for DNA was the greatest out of those options. It had been sitting out in the weather for 4 days, essentially. So this was our, however small chance it was, this was the best chance we thought was to make.
I also want to talk to you about Ted Johnson. When was Ted Johnson interviewed?
The same evening, the 23rd
23rd
February.
In the evening?
Yes.
Later in the evening, 7, something around?
Yes, it was later.
And he was given a gunshot residue test, is that right?
Yes.
Can you explain that to me? Why was that done?
Just gathering as much information as we can, as much evidence as we can, because we don't, at that point, have an idea of exactly what is going on.
When you interviewed Mr. Johnson, did you have any idea about a possible time of death?
No.
In fact, until you got the report on the victim's phone, we didn't know that she tried to call 911 at 1:11 a.m.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson was interviewed way more than 6 hours after 1:11 a.m., is that right?
He was.
And in the course of your investigation, did you find any evidence that would lead you to believe that Mr. Johnson was a suspect in this homicide?
No.
I now want to talk about different surveillance videos. In the course of the investigation, was there a canvass done of the entire neighborhood to determine if there were any surveillance videos available?
Yes.
And in that canvass, were videos found?
Yes.
Can you tell me from what locations those videos were found?
20th and Hampshire, the bus barn, as we call it, or transportation office. Then the Napide videos, as we became to call them, at a residence on the 200 block of South 20th Street. And then the house directly west of Becky's house.
Tell me how that happened, specifically with regard to the bus barn videos. How did you find all these different videos?
I had assistance from another officer who took time to basically review videos and see if there was anything out of place or abnormal with them.
And did you start with February 23rd?
Yes.
And when you started with February 23rd, did you see something unusual?
Yes.
Explain to me in a general sense what you saw on February 23rd that was unusual to you as a detective.
There was a person on a bike riding in the direction of Becky's residence in the middle of the night in February, which is odd.
Most people don't do bike rides in the middle of the night.
Correct.
Objection.
That will be overruled.
Most people don't do bike rides in the middle of the night.
Correct.
And most people don't ride the bike in the middle of February.
Correct.
After you found that bike ride on February 23rd, especially with the bus barn videos, did you then work backwards to determine if there were more videos that would be relevant?
Yes.
And when you did that, did you find more videos of a person riding a bike in the middle of the night in February?
Yes.
Then from there, you said you found a video at 224 South 20th, the Nappi video, as we've come to call it. And did you look to see if there were videos that would correlate with those other times?
We did.
And did you find some videos at the Nappi residence that correlated with the times of the Quincy bus barn?
Yes.
And as we've heard, there were video at Taylor Hyman, and did you look to see if that would correlate with the other videos?
Yes.
And did they all appear to correlate?
Yes.
Let's start then with February 14th, 2023, okay? There was video from the Quincy bus barn on the 14th at 2023, is that right?
Yes.
And that was approximately, you pull up that video. That was at approximately 12:29 a.m., is that right?
Yes.
Ms. Keck, if you could play that video. Now, Detective Eddie, to be fair, you can't, from that video, say who is riding that bike.
No. No.
Can't tell if it's a man or a woman.
No.
Can't tell if they're white or black.
No.
Can't tell if they're tall or short.
No.
Can't really say anything about them. Fair to say?
Yes.
After watching that video at 12:29 a.m., was there a video at the Nappi residence at 224 South 20th, nearly immediately after that, about a minute and a half later?
Yes.
Ms. Cook, if you could play that video, please. Hit pause for just a second, please. At the top of the screen, it says 2:14:23 at 1:31 a.m. We've already heard testimony that that was actually an hour off and that the time was 12:31 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
Ms. Keck, if you please hit play. Detective Eddie, person on the bike riding north on 20th and then turning east on Prairie, is that correct?
South on 20th and east on Prairie Avenue.
And then east on Prairie.
Yes.
After looking at that video, did you then go to a video from Taylor Hyman on the 14th as well?
Yes.
And Ms. Keck, if you could hit that video and hit pause for just a minute. And that video's time was 12:37 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Ms. Keck, if you could hit play, please. Detective Eddie, did you find more video on February 21st, 2023?
Yes.
Now, before we talk about that, on the 15th, the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, the 19th, and the 20th, were there any midnight bike rides?
No.
You watched from midnight to 4 or 5 a.m., no bike rides on any of those other days.
No.
Then let's talk about February 20. Oh, I apologize. There's one more video on the 14th. I forgot about that. There was another video at 12:52 at the Quincy bus bar, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Keck, if you did play on that video. You see a person on a bike headed north on 20th Street, correct?
Yes.
You shared with us no video on the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, or 20th?
Yes.
Was there video on the 21st?
Yes.
At 1 a.m., was there video from the Quincy bus barn?
Yes.
And what does that video show in a general sense?
Person on a bike riding south on 20th Street.
Ms. Keck, if you did play, please. Go back to the cover story. After watching that video, was there video at the South 20th residence?
Yes.
And that video is at 1:01 a.m., is that right? About a minute and a half later.
Yes.
If you hit play, please. And again, Detective Eddie, do you see that person on the bike go south on 20th and turn left or east on Prairie.
Yes.
There is no video from the Hyman residence on that day.
No.
At 1:17 a.m., is there video at the bus barn again?
Yes.
And again, Detective Eddie, you see a person on a bike headed north on 20th Street.
Yes.
Then again, at 1:41 a.m., is there video from the bus barn?
Yes.
Ms. Keck, if you hit play. And approximately 15 minutes later, at 1:56 a.m., is there a bus barn video again,
Yes.
showing a person on a bike headed north on 20th again?
Yes.
On the 21st, are those the only videos of a person riding a bike by the Quincy bus barn?
Yes.
Let's then move on to the 22nd of February. At 12:57 a.m., do you once again see a person riding a bike south on 20th Street by the Quincy bus barn?
Yes.
Ms. Keck, if you did. Back to the cover screen. Approximately a minute and a half later, at 12:59 a.m., is there video of a person riding south on 20th Street and then turning left or east on Prairie again?
Yes.
Ms. Keck? And on the 22nd at 1:05 a.m., approximately 5 or 6 minutes later, was there video from the Hyman residence?
Yes.
Ms. Keck, if you could hit play. And approximately 5 minutes after that, at 1:10 a.m., is there video at the Quincy Bus Barn of a person headed north on 20th Street on a bike?
Yes.
Ms. Keck, if you could hit play. Then about 30 minutes later, is there video from the bus barn at 1:46 of a person riding south on 20th?
Yes.
Hit play, please. And approximately a minute and a half later, at 1:48 a.m., is there video at that South 20th residence
Yes.
showing a person riding south on 20th and turning east on Prairie?
Yes.
Ms. Keck? And at approximately 1:53 a.m., 5 minutes later, was there video at Taylor Hyman's residence again?
Yes.
Ms. Keck? And approximately 15 minutes after that, is there video at the Quincy Bus Barn again of a person going north on 20?
Yes.
Let's move on to February 23rd, 2023. Are there video from the Quincy Bus Barn and 224 South 20th on the night, early morning hours of Becky's murder?
Yes.
At 12:55 a.m., is there video of a person riding a bike south on 20th by the bus barn?
Yes.
Ms. Keck? Ms. Keck, that was the 22nd. At 12:55 a.m. If you could hit play, please. And Detective Eddie, approximately a minute and a half later at 12:57, was there video from 224 South 20?
Yes.
Again, showing a person riding south on 20th Street and turning east on Prairie.
Yes.
Hit play, please. And at 1:16 a.m., is there a video from the Quincy bus barn, again showing a person riding north on 20th Street?
Yes.
If you'd hit play. Detective Eddie, in the course of your investigation, was there a test bike ride that was done by another officer, specifically, I believe it was Zach Demas, is that right?
Yes.
Did he do that at night as well?
He did.
And was there bus barn video of that ride as well?
Yes.
The bike that he used, did it have reflectors on the front and rear wheel?
Yes.
Did it have a front reflector on the bike as well?
Yes.
When you viewed the video from Zach Demas's ride, did you notice anything?
Yes.
What did you notice?
Those reflectors.
Your Honor, that's been introduced as part of this same Exhibit 162, and we'll be playing that next. Based on that video, did you draw any conclusions about the bike that we saw on the 14th, the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd?
That it did not have those same reflectors.
I now want to move on and talk about the defendant's cell phone records. You've had a chance to review those, and they've been introduced into evidence. We'd ask permission to publish those again, Your Honor.
You may publish them.
Next slide, please. Next slide. On the 14th, when we see this person on the bike ride, is there any cell phone activity going on the defendant's phone? Are there any phone calls being made?
Mr. Jones, I'm going to stop. You said on the 14th. Please state the month.
I apologize. On February 13th into February 14th, 2023, are there any phone calls going on the defendant's cell phone?
Within that time frame?
Within this time frame, correct?
No.
In fact, the last call on the 13th is 2/13/23 UTC time of 20:16:46. Did I read that right?
Yes.
So that would be 20 minus 6, so
2:16.
2:16 in the afternoon, correct?
Yes.
So from 2:16 in the afternoon on the 23rd, the 14th of February, until the 14th, I'm sorry, I misread that, I apologize, you go back. The 4th is UTC time.
Yes, they're in UTC.
The last time would be the 2/14/23 at 1:38:36 a.m., is that right? Because that would actually be the day before the 13th. You have to
Yes.
subtract 6. So that would be, help me out with the math here, Detective Eddie.
So we're looking at 1:36 on the 14th, so we subtract 6 hours, okay? And you put me on the spot too.
I know. Well, 1:38 in the afternoon, or 1:38 in the morning, minus 6, so 7.
Yes.
7:38 in
7,
the evening.
yes. I think that's a 6.
7, you're looking at the wrong line, one line down.
Okay,
7:38 in the evening.
gotcha. Yes,
And then the next call is the 14th at 7:32 UTC time, which is 1:32 in the morning.
yes.
And on the 21st of 2023, you go forward, Ms. Cat. The last phone call on the 21st, I think it's the next slide. Is at UTC time 2/21/23 at 22:37:54.
Yes,
That's UTC time, we have to subtract 6, so that would be 16:37 or 4:37 in the afternoon.
yes.
And the next phone call on his phone is on the 22nd at 15:29 UTC time, which is 15 minus 6, 9:29 in the morning, correct?
Yes.
And then we'll go on to the 22nd and into the 23rd. And again, if you look at the bottom of the screen, the last phone call on the 22nd, it's line 122, is at 18:32 UTC time, which would be 12:32 Quincy time, correct?
Yes.
And the next call on his cell phone is not until 14:01 on the 23rd, which would be 8:01 in the morning.
Yes.
Next slide, please. I'm sorry? Oh. Just a moment now.
You may.
Let's then go to the defendant's laptop. You had a chance to review that as well,
Yes.
and the activity report on his laptop.
Yes.
We can pull that up, Ms. Keck, that's been introduced and admitted into evidence. If we look at the screen, on the 13th of February at 14:02, 2:02 in the afternoon, he does something on his mailbox, or the computer is doing something on the mailbox, and then there's nothing that is done until the 14th at 1:10 a.m., correct?
Yes.
There's no other activity on the laptop between 2:02 in the afternoon and 1:10 a.m. in the morning, correct?
Yes.
Then on the 21st, there is no activity on his computer from 2/21/23 at 20:27, that's 8:27 p.m. to the next morning, the 22nd, at 7:01 a.m. Correct?
Yes.
Then on the 22nd, and into the 23rd, there's no activity on his computer from the 22nd at 8:05, 8:15 p.m. to 6:02 a.m. on the 23rd. Is that right?
Yes.
When you were, did you have a chance to look at the defendant's cell phone?
Yes.
When you looked at his defendant's cell phone, was there information that you could glean about when that cell phone reports that the screen is locked or unlocked?
Yes.
And did you prepare a report based on that information about when his cell phone screen was locked and unlocked?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Exhibit 162-1. Are these the slides that we prepared in connection with your testimony for this issue?
Yes.
We'd ask these to publish. They've already been admitted. They're part of Exhibit 162.
You may publish them.
Detective Addy, starting on February 21st, 2023, what time did the defendant's cell phone lock? The screen was locked and the phone wasn't being used.
So we're looking at the second line where it's locked at 00:44:52 on the 21st.
And that's Quincy time, so that'd be 12:44 in the morning?
Yeah, so the -6 indicates that the adjustment has been made, so it's local time.
And it unlocks at what time?
It unlocks at 5:30 on the 21st.
And on the 22nd, his phone locks at what time?
His phone is locked on February 22nd, 2023 at 00:50, which is 12:50 a.m.
And what time does it unlock?
It is unlocked at 1:15 a.m. on the 22nd.
And does it lock again?
Yes,
At what time?
it locks on February 22nd, 2023 at 1:39, that's a.m.
And what time does it unlock?
At 2:22 a.m. on the 22nd.
And on February 23rd? What time does his phone lock?
His phone is locked on the 23rd at 00:38 or 12:38 a.m.
And what time does it unlock?
It is unlocked at 2:07 a.m.
Mr. Jones, I'm going to stop you for just a minute because we're all going to stand up and stretch, all right? Everybody's allowed to stand up and stretch.
No. Yes. You're welcome.
off the record. I'd asked the clerk to lead in calisthenics, but she declined, so you're on your own. All right, please be seated. You may proceed.
In the course of your investigation, did you also execute a search warrant for a fitness band that the defendant was wearing when the search warrant was served, what's commonly referred to as a Whoop fitness band?
Yes.
And did you receive information from that Whoop fitness band?
Yes.
Your Honor, that's been admitted in evidence previously, and I'd ask permission to use that information.
You may publish excerpts of that information.
Okay.
If we get to the first slide, please. Detective Eddie, Peoples 156, what are we looking at here?
The Whoop fitness strap that was collected from the defendant.
And is there a specific serial number or item number that's associated with that Whoop armband?
Our evidence number is item number 110.
I'm talking about with regard to the item itself, a serial number for that item.
Yeah, there's an ID number for the device. It's in the lower right-hand photo of 4A0542044.
And is that the item number that was used in requesting a search warrant for information for that specific Whoop fitness armband?
Yes.
Next slide, please. And again, the defendant was wearing that on March 1st when when the search warrants were executed. Is that right?
Yes.
For the record, we have 157. If we go to the next slide, 158. And when you got that information from Whoop, first, can you tell me, was there information about the user?
Yes, there's account information that they provided.
And are we, the account information here on the left where it says first name Tim, last name Bliefnick, country US, city Quincy, Illinois, is that right?
Yes.
And there's also a email account, timbleefnick@gmail.com.
Yes.
The information that you got, let's talk about the information that you got. First of all, when you got that information, how many lines of data did you receive?
So in the metric data set alone was 1,474,818 lines of data.
Get the first slide. Is this basically what we're looking at, that metric data that you're talking about?
Yes.
And it's got a strap ID number that we just talked about, 4A0542044, correct?
Yes.
And there's a date, February 13, 2023, correct?
Yes.
And there's a time. What can you tell me about the time?
So each line was represented in this timestamp, and they would go up estimate of a second, but it would, if you did the math, it's less than a second.
Is this time Central Standard Time or UTC time?
It is in UTC time.
So to get to Quincy time, we would have to subtract 6.
Do that math, yes.
The Whoop armband, do you know how it charges?
It uses a battery pack that would slip on to the device as you wear it, so you do not have to remove the device to charge it, so it can charge with that battery pack on your wrist.
Also, when you got the information from Whoop, is there any GPS data that's included with that?
They did not provide any GPS data,
The Whoop doesn't have GPS data.
none that they provided.
And you reviewed all 1,474,818 lines of data, as you talked about, second for second, that it's providing information, correct?
Yes.
And how does that work? The Whoop provides information to the phone, and the phone uploads it to the cloud?
So there's a Bluetooth connection that's established between the device and whatever phone it's paired with, and then that information is relayed to Whoop via the internet through a cloud connection.
Now, when you got this information, you already had all the videos, correct?
Yes.
And did you look at the Whoop data, the second for second, to determine if there was any correlation between the Whoop data and the videos that you already got?
Yes,
And were there?
there were.
Let's talk about those correlations. First, on February 14th, 2023, was there a period of time when there was a change in that second for second connection to the phone?
Yes.
So if we look at this data, this is on February 14th, 2023, same strap ID number, right?
Yes.
And it starts at 6:00:20 seconds, but as we know, you have to subtract 6, so that's midnight and 20 seconds.
Yes.
And we have midnight and 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and then it changes.
Yes.
There's a gap of 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 10 seconds. Is that right?
Yes.
Help me out. It stops connecting to the phone at basically midnight, fair to say?
Yes.
And on the 14th, it reconnects at 1:10 a.m. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, what about on the 21st? Was there another gap in time?
Yes.
Next slide, please. And on February 21st, 2021, it stops connecting to the phone at 12:45 a.m., correct?
Yes.
And then it starts reconnecting to the phone at 8:11 UTC time, which would be 2:11. Correct?
Yes.
What about on the 22nd? Were there, in fact, 2 gaps in time?
Yes.
Next slide, please. The Whoop disconnects or stops relaying information to the phone at 6:42 UTC time, which would be 12:42 a.m., correct?
Yes.
And it reconnects to the phone at 1:16 a.m.
Yes.
Is there another gap right after that?
There is.
Next slide. Again, 7, 39, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. And at 7:39:28, it stops connecting to the phone, right?
Yes.
That would be 1:39 a.m. Quincy time, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And it reconnects to the phone at 18:19 Quincy time, which would be 2:19 a.m.
Yes.
And on the 23rd, is there another gap in time on the defendant's Whoop?
Yes.
Next slide, please. Midnight, 36 minutes and 43 seconds, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52. And at 12:36 a.m., it stops connecting to the phone.
Yes.
And at 2:01 a.m., it starts reconnecting to the phone, correct?
Yes.
You look through all 1,474,818 lines of data. On the 15th, the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, the 19th, are there any significant gaps?
Not during that time frame.
On the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, are there any significant gaps in that same time frame?
No.
If I could have just a moment, Your Honor.
You may.
Thank you, Detective Eddie. That's all the questions I have.
Cross, Ms. Schnock.
Yes, Your Honor. All right, Detective, while it's all fresh in our minds, I'm going to start talking about this Whoop stuff, okay?
Okay.
Have you ever worked for the Whoop company?
No.
Have you ever received any specialized training in how the Whoop device works?
No.
Have you ever received any specialized training with how to interpret the Whoop data?
No.
Okay. As far as what we are looking at is concerned, do you know how the Whoop tracker is different from other fitness trackers?
Just for my own research that I've read up on it.
Okay. Is there anything proprietary about the Whoop device that is different from other devices?
I don't know.
They have their own proprietary algorithm, correct?
I would imagine they do.
Okay, but you're not aware of what that algorithm is or what it means or anything in that regard, correct?
Correct.
As far as how you charge a Whoop is concerned, you said that there's a battery pack on it's a wristband, correct?
Yes.
And is it rubber? Is it a cloth material? What kind of material is it?
The band itself.
Okay, and then there's a battery pack on it, correct?
I mean, are you asking what
band itself.
is? What's it made of?
Yes.
I do not know.
Okay, and then, but it's a strap.
Yes.
And then there's a battery pack on the strap, is that correct?
There's a battery pack you can place over the strap. Yes.
Okay, and that is what keeps the tracker going while it's on your wrist and not charging and connected to a wall, correct?
It can do charging while it's on your wrist.
And you can also remove it and connect it into a wall and do wall charging, correct?
The strap itself,
The battery
the
pack.
battery, that's how
Yes.
you would charge the battery.
Yes,
is
and
to
you can
plug it in.
And you can remove that battery from the strap, correct?
Yes.
And you can plug it into a wall and you can charge it that way, correct?
The battery pack,
Yes.
yes. That's how I would imagine it would happen.
Sure, so you don't have to have it on your wrist to charge it, correct?
You do not have to have the battery pack on your wrist to charge the battery.
Thank you, okay. Do you know, does the Whoop track data even if you aren't wearing it?
There's a certain amount of data that the strap will retain, according to the information that I gleaned from my research, that will stay on the strap. And then once it connects to the app, it will upload
Okay.
to Whoop.
Okay, and as far as the actual strap is concerned, that data that strap collects is then transmitted via Bluetooth to the phone that it's connected with.
To the phone's application, yes.
Okay, so then there's an app that you download with this fitness tracker,
To pair
correct?
with it, yes.
And that would be on a phone or a tablet or any place else you could put this kind of app, correct?
Yes.
All right. And the fitness tracker will sync with the app, correct?
Yes,
And that's done through Bluetooth, correct?
yes,
So if there's no Bluetooth connection, the data can't sync. Is that correct?
that would be my assumption,
Okay.
yes.
And so even though the data may not be there on the application, once you sync it, it would show up. Is that fair?
It's fair to say that.
Okay. And then do you know with this particular fitness tracker, can you also manually input data that the tracker may not have collected?
I do not know that.
Okay. Before you got the data off of the Whoop device, did you make sure that it was properly synced to make sure all of the data was collected off of that tracker?
I don't understand the question. Are we making sure that that Whoop or the Whoop strap is connected to the phone?
Yes.
That I don't know.
Okay. Do you know if there would be any gaps in Bluetooth connectivity during the times that you're talking about?
I don't know.
Okay. So if it's not connected to Bluetooth, it's not transmitting the data, correct?
If you're referring to the metrics database that we're
Yes.
looking at,
Yes.
then that would be my assumption based on what we saw.
Okay. And then if there's a disruption in the Bluetooth, if you sync it after the fact, is it your understanding that then that should fill in whatever gaps that there were during that time?
Again, I don't know how that metrics database works. That data set is unique to me on this situation, so I couldn't tell you how it's going to backfill and catch up that data.
Okay. Did you do any follow-up extractions to see if there was any back-end data in this case?
On the device?
On any device that you found?
No.
Okay. So the device that you have, or the information that you have is the information that you were able to extract and make sense
The
out of?
information we had came directly from Whoop.
Okay. And then you interpreted the data, correct?
Yes.
This wasn't somebody that Whoop came and explained this to you or said, this is what this means and this is what that means, correct?
We were given, within that data set that we were provided by Whoop, they gave us a brief explanation of the data within that information.
Okay. And in reference to People's Exhibits 161, the only thing that you can say with any certainty during these time periods is that the Whoop tracker was not connecting to the phone that it was attached to.
Say that one more time.
Sure. So you referenced some gaps in here.
Okay.
So for example, in People's 161-1, you said that there was a gap at 12:42 and between 12:42 and 1:16 on February 22nd, 2023.
Okay.
So is that gap simply the Whoop tracker not connecting to the phone that it is registered to?
I mean, if you're asking me for my opinion, I can tell you, I don't know what exactly is happening, but I can tell you what I believe is happening.
Well, if you don't know what's happening, I don't want you to guess.
Okay,
So if you
I don't know
you
what,
don't
I don't know
Okay.
what is happening now.
That's fair. I appreciate
Okay.
your honesty, Detective. Excuse me, moving on. You talked about searching Tim's car.
Yes,
Were you there for the search of Tim's car?
I was.
And during that search, he was cooperative and he actually told you and other officers where certain things were that you were looking for, correct?
I wasn't at the scene when that vehicle was collected,
Okay.
but I was there when we searched the vehicle the next day.
Okay. And were there swabs taken from the inside of his vehicle for further testing?
We did collect swabs.
And what did you guys take swabs of, if you recall?
I don't recall exactly what all we took swabs of.
Would you have swabbed the steering wheel?
Usually we do.
And
yes.
was that for things like DNA and gunshot residue?
It would have been for DNA.
Okay. And you also found a pair of gloves in Tim's car that day that it was processed, correct?
3 sets of gloves.
Okay.
yes.
And were those gloves sent off to the lab for
I don't
testing?
believe we sent those off, no.
Okay. Did you check the size of any of those gloves to see if they were adult or child-size gloves?
I didn't check the size, but just by looking at them, they were adult sizes.
Okay. But you didn't check to confirm, correct?
Correct.
As far as other searches that are concerned, you and other detectives also searched certain items of Ted Johnson's, correct?
Yes,
Including his gun safe, correct?
yes,
And was there a bag with Becky's name found in that gun safe?
there was.
And did it have just over $13,000 in cash in that bag?
Yes.
As far as the messages are concerned between Tim and Becky on Our Family Wizard that you previously testified to, they were not arguing about picking up the kids, correct?
No,
There was no disagreements about Tim taking the kids, correct?
no,
Nobody was mad at each other because there was a last-minute scheduling change that week, correct?
correct.
And there were no threats in those messages, correct?
No,
Two people making arrangements for their kids, correct?
yes.
As far as the bike is concerned, the blue bike that we've been talking a lot about, when was the first time that you personally saw that bike?
The date we collected it, that date escapes me right now, but it was whenever Inspector Hollensteiner found it.
Okay. Do you know the whereabouts of that bike the day before you saw that?
The whereabouts of the bike before I saw it?
Yeah.
No,
So when you told Mr. Jones that that bike had been outside for 4 days, you don't know that that bike had been outside for 4 days, correct?
the time span from when we found it to the time of Becky's murder was 4 days.
But you don't know where that bike was in the previous 4 days, correct?
No,
You don't know if it was kept inside or outside, correct?
no.
Ms. Stock, I'm going to stop you. If I could have counsel approach, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I need the court report of the defendant back in the room there while we're gone. You're welcome to stand up and stretch while we take care of this. All right?
Maybe he didn't know he was doing something for him. But when they're ready, I know, what's that Shirley because I thought his mom said that she works at the camp on Friday mornings. Just for, well, from 9 to 11:45. She's not there very long. And she hasn't been volunteering, but maybe a couple of months. So she's fairly young. But a lot of the girls live from somewhere, probably church or something. You know, they all go to church together. I haven't seen him in some years. Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw when we came in, it had chairs in it.
All right? Ms. Schnock, you may continue with your cross-examination.
Thank you. Detective, I'm going to re-ask this so that we can all get back on track here, but you don't know where that bike had been for the previous 4 days prior to finding it, where you found it on the day that it was found, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you also talked about the videos, and we saw the videos that were played today, and some of them were even played last week. We don't know if the bike that's played in that video is the same bike that Quincy police found behind that garage, correct?
Correct.
And as far as the videos are concerned, did you request any videos from the bus barn before February 14th of 2023?
I believe we had the 13th available to us.
Okay. Did you ask for anything before February 13th of 2023?
I believe we did, but they were purged or no longer there by the time we got back that far.
Okay, and then what was the latest date that you requested?
The 13th, February 13th, I believe, is all we got back
So
to.
what were the dates that you requested video from the bus barn?
All the dates that we could get from, as far as they could go back to the 13th till the 28th is when we got the last one.
So they searched from February 13th to February 28th, correct?
Yes,
Between the hours of midnight and 4 o'clock,
I believe
correct?
so, yes.
There were no requests made for any video before February 13th, correct?
We asked to go back as far as we could, so the 13th was as far back as they would go.
Okay, and so there's no viable video before February 13th?
That's what I was made aware of.
And then the last date that you would have requested viable video would have been February 28th, correct?
Yes.
And were there any requests made outside of the hours of midnight to 4 o'clock?
For our purposes of our review,
Yes.
no.
Okay. As far as the canvassing of the neighborhoods is concerned, did you have any personal responsibility with going door to door and looking and asking for video?
On the evening of, I did a quick survey of houses in that area.
Okay, and how many houses did you do a quick survey of that evening?
I don't know, half dozen or more.
Okay. Was there anybody that you had to follow up with after that evening with respect to video?
I did not.
Okay. How many officers working under you did you have going door to door canvassing neighborhoods?
There was at least 2 officers that did a lot of the canvassing.
Do you know how many hours those officers spent going door to door and canvassing?
I do not.
Do you know how many doors they knocked on canvassing?
I do not.
Do you know if they followed up with anybody that they had failed to make contact with previously?
I'm sure they did, but I didn't ask that question.
And as far as the video is concerned, in these videos that we're looking at off of 20th Street and by the bus barn, just by looking at those videos, we can't say that that's the same person in each video, correct?
Yes.
And we can't say where that person is coming from, correct?
Yes.
And we can't say where they're going, correct?
Yes.
As far as the phone activity that you previously testified to in People's Exhibit 164, that purely just tells us what calls are coming in and coming out, correct?
Are you referring to the AT&T records? Is
Yes.
that 164? Yes.
Okay, so that doesn't tell us data activity that may be going on, correct?
In that exhibit, no.
Okay, so when you say that there's no activity on certain dates at certain times, it doesn't mean that there's no activity, it just means that there's no calls made during that time, correct?
Yes.
All right, and then the same thing with the laptop. You talked about the laptop and you referred to People's 162-2 and stated that there was no activity during certain days and certain times. People's 162-2 is not a comprehensive exhibit of all of the activity of that laptop, correct?
Correct. I believe it's labeled online activity.
Those are just searches that were done on Google, correct?
Online, I would say.
So it doesn't mean that there was no activity, it just means that there was no activity on Google at that time.
Online.
Okay, that's fair. That doesn't mean there wasn't activity someplace else.
Correct.
Your Honor, if I may have a moment.
You may.
Were you personally present for the search of Tim's house on Hampshire Street?
Yes,
Are you familiar with the area where the large crowbar was found that was seized and collected and sent off for testing?
I believe it was in the basement.
Were there other work items in the basement, like a workbench and miter saws and other tools that you would normally see together?
There were.
Okay. During the course of your investigation, did Quincy Police also search a pond and I think 3 waste lagoons at a trailer park outside of town?
Yes.
And nothing valuable was found there, correct?
No.
Also by that trailer park, there's about 20 acres of timber and woods, correct?
Yes.
Was that acreage searched?
To the best of our ability.
And nothing valuable was found there, correct?
Yes.
There was also trash that Quincy Police looked through, correct?
Yes.
Not only Tim's personal trash at his house, but I think somewhere in upwards of just south of 800 tons of trash was also sifted through by Quincy Police, correct?
Yes.
And nothing valuable was found there either, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, I don't have any other questions.
Redirect.
Just a couple questions. With regard to the screen lock activity report, the phone would show that it was locked from 12:44 a.m. on the 21st to 5:30 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Which would indicate that it wasn't being used during that period of time, correct?
Yes.
And on the 22nd, it was locked from 12:50 a.m. to 1:15 a.m., which would indicate the same, correct?
Yes.
And then from 1:39 a.m. to 2:22 a.m. on the 22nd, it would indicate the same, correct?
Yes.
And February 23rd, it was locked from 12:38 a.m. to 2:07 a.m., indicating it wasn't being used, correct?
Yes.
And with regard to the WHOOP data, the only gaps on the WHOOP on the 14th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd are when we see a person on the bike and on the video at the Bus Barn, Napai, and Hyman residence, correct?
Yes.
On the other days, when we don't see that, the 13th, the 15th, the 18th, the 19th, the 13th, the 15th, the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, the 19th, the 20th, and all the time after the 23rd, there's not a gap, is there?
No.
That's all the questions I have.
Ms. Schnock, you want any other questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down.
Thank you.
All right, and is he free to leave?
Yes, Your Honor.
Additional evidence, Mr. Jones.
Could I have one moment, Your Honor?
You may.
Judge, at this point, I believe all the evidence that we've introduced has been admitted and published. With that exception, if there's something that we've missed, I'd ask to deal with that. But with that exception, the people would rest.
Let me search with you.
Ms. Keck's gone through it, and she assures me it's all been done. Judge, all the evidence that we wanted admitted and published has been done.
All right. The court records also show that everything that was offered has been admitted or ruled on. So the people now rest. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, because the people have rested, then there are several matters that we need to take up outside your presence. So what we're going to do is I'm going to let you break for today. You'll need to be back tomorrow at the same time. Try and be there by 10 till 9, and then we will start again at 9 o'clock tomorrow. I would tell you, again, you've only heard part of the evidence. You haven't heard the law that applies to the case, so you are not to make any decisions or reach any opinions on this case until you've heard all the evidence and be instructed on the law. And then again, I would tell you that you should not do any independent investigation or research on any subject or person relating to the case. What you may have seen or heard outside the courtroom is not evidence. This includes any press, radio, or television programs. It also includes any information available on the internet. Such programs, reports, and information are not evidence, and your verdict should not be influenced in any way by such material. For example, you must not use the internet, including Google, Wikipedia, or any other source that you might otherwise use to search for any information about the case or the law which applies to the case or the people involved in the case, including the defendant, witnesses, lawyers, and judge. During the course of the trial, do not communicate with, provide information personally, in writing or electronically to anyone about this case, not even your own family or friends, courtroom personnel, and also not even among yourselves until instructed otherwise. You must not provide any information about the case to anyone by any means at all, and this includes posting information about the case or your thoughts about it on any device or internet site, including blogs, chat rooms, or any social networking websites such as Twitter, Facebook, or any other means. You cannot use electronic devices or services to communicate about this case, including cell phones, smartphones, laptops, the internet, and any other tools of technology. The use of any such devices or services in connection with your duties is prohibited. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I would thank you, and you are free to go for the day.
All rise.
Let's take 15 minutes, counsel, and then Mr. Jones, can you have,
We're going to print out jury instructions.
okay, well, good, that's what I was going to ask, because either you have to print them out or I have to print them out.
We'll print them out.
All right, thank you. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
What's wrong?
Don't stress about that.
All of
We are back on the record on 23 CF 170, People versus Timothy Bliefnick. Mr. Bliefnick is present in court along with his attorney, Ms. Casey Schnock. People are present by Assistant State's Attorney Josh Jones and Laura Keck. The jury is not present. And Ms. Schnock, you wish to make a motion?
Your Honor, I do, and just as a matter of record keeping and housekeeping, the written motion will be filed at a later date.
That's fine.
Okay.
I have no objection to that, Your Honor.
All right, you may be heard.
Thank you, and may it please the court and counsel. At this point, I would be asking for a directed verdict in light of the evidence or lack of evidence that the people have failed to present over the course of the last week. In order to sustain a guilty verdict, our jurors are going to have to believe that Tim left a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, and 5-year-old home alone, got on a bike, rode his bike from 1641 Hampshire to 24th and Kentucky Road, murdered Becky, and rode back home. That theory is not supported by the evidence. If you look at the video that Quincy police were able to recover, there is no identification on those videos. Definitely no positive identification with respect to Tim. It has been testified to ad nauseum that we don't know anything about this person on the video. We don't know their age, we don't know their race, we don't know their gender, we don't know where they're coming from, we don't know where they're going to. We don't even know that this is the same person on each one of these videos, and that hasn't been disputed. I think every single person that has been questioned about that agrees you cannot identify the individual on that video. Secondly, was with respect to the bike. The bike handlebars were removed. They were sent off to the crime lab for testing, and there is nothing that the crime lab was able to recover from those bike handlebars to tie those to Tim. Furthermore, that bike was found behind a garage on 18th Street. It was never found at Tim's house. It was never found in Tim's possession. It was never found in Becky's possession or at Becky's house either. This appears to be a random bike that was abandoned or left outside of a garage on 18th Street that has no associations to Tim Bliefnick. Certainly no associations that could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he's guilty. Next, we have the pry bar, or the crowbar, and the multi-tool. Those were testified to. The multi-tool was excluded completely. The crowbar was inconclusive. Inconclusive lab results are not proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Tim committed this crime. It is simply evidence that nobody can say one way or another whether that crowbar was used during the commission of that crime. That crowbar, as I have said, inconclusive at best, but certainly nothing that links Tim to using that crowbar to open that window. You certainly can't see a crowbar in any of those videos. Next, you have the shoe print that was left out right by the window that the people have alluded was broken into and was used as at the point of entry. I believe no less than 6 pairs of Tim's shoes were taken for comparison purposes. There were pictures taken of Tim's shoe, of Ted Johnson's shoe for comparison purposes, and the 1 pair of shoes that were sent to the crime lab for testing specifically excluded Tim as part of that testing. Those were not Tim's shoes that made that footprint, and he was excluded as an individual that would have made those prints. Next, we have heard about all of the gloves that were taken from Tim's house and car and trash and other places. Those gloves were sent off to the crime lab for testing, and there's no blood, no DNA, no nothing that links those gloves to this crime or any other crime for that matter. So the gloves don't prove anything. Next, we get to the shell casings. There's no DNA that connects those casings to Tim. There's no fingerprints that connects those casings to Tim. And they do not have a gun that fired those casings. And then we have the divorce talk, the hearsay statements. Most of those were 2 years old. At least one witness testified that those were joking conversations, that anything that Becky said regarding her being scared of Tim was said in jest, and were girls blowing off steam at work. Nothing threatening. None of these, what I will call hearsay witnesses, were able to provide any information as to why this would have been said or what the fear was or when the fear was instilled. None of these witnesses did anything to prevent anything from happening other than just listening. Becky went out of her way to tell all of these people almost the same exact statement over and over and over and over again, but we didn't hear any evidence from her own attorney, Jerry Timmerwilke, that she was scared of Tim and needed protection from Tim. That was the one person in all of this that had access to the courts, and he didn't have anything in front of him to do anything with that. And then we have the Aldi bags, which the crime lab expert was here today and said that he was not able to make any match at all and that any analysis was precluded. So the theory that these Aldi bags were used as somewhat as a silencer is not supported by the evidence. Your Honor, if you look at this case as a whole, it sounds great. We have video, but you can't see who's in the video. We have a bike, but his DNA isn't on the bike. We have a footprint, but the footprint excludes Tim. So in light of all of the evidence, even if you take it as true in the most favorable way and in the most favorable light to the state, Your Honor, it is our request of the court that you find that the state has failed to meet their burden of proof. They have failed to establish a prima facie case in this matter, and that the only appropriate remedy is to grant the motion for a directed verdict at the close of the people's case. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schnock. Mr. Jones or Ms. Keck?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be relatively brief. I think the standard here, the court has to look at the evidence in the light most favorable to the non-moving party. And I think if the court looks at the evidence in that light, I think it's clear that we have enough evidence here for a reasonable jury to conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed that offense and shot Becky Bliefnick 14 times while she lay on that cold bathroom floor. Your Honor, I think some things aren't covered. We certainly have to look at each piece of evidence, not as an individual piece of evidence, but as part of a whole. And I think if the court looks at the evidence as part of a whole, the court will see that we have the WHOOP data, the videos, the correlation between the two. We have the bike that, yes, it doesn't have the defendant's fingerprints or DNA on it, but it's on his phone. We have Mr. Blazing, who says he sold it to a tall, athletic, white individual. But we have all these pieces of evidence that, as a whole, paint a picture. And I think if the court looks at all those pieces of evidence, not as individual pieces, but as part of a whole, then it is clear that the motion for a directed verdict should be denied, and I would ask the court to so find. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Schnock, anything further?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
The court has considered the evidence and has considered the arguments of counsel. At this point, this is a motion for directed verdict at the close of the people's evidence. In order to decide the case, the court has to determine whether or not the people have presented what's called a prima facie case. That is, they presented sufficient evidence on every issue that they need to prove whereby a jury could find the defendant guilty. The court must look at the evidence in a light most favorable to the people. Taking all that into consideration, the people have presented a prima facie case, and the court would deny the defendant's motion for directed verdict at the close of the people's case. And then, having denied that motion, then we are now ready to proceed to the defendant's case. And Ms. Schnock, has your client made a decision whether or not he is going to testify?
Not a firm decision yet, Your Honor, no.
Okay. Mr. Bliefnick, you have a right to remain silent. Whether you testify or not is your decision alone. You can certainly consider the advice given by counsel, but in the end, whether or not you testify is your decision. Do you understand that?
I do.
Okay. And then, Ms. Schnock, have you determined whether or not you are going to present any evidence tomorrow?
I have.
Okay, are you going to present evidence tomorrow?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Then what we will need to do is the jury comes in tomorrow. You will make your final decision then before the jury comes in, I'm going to ask whether or not your client has decided whether or not to testify. If he's decided not to testify, then we will be finished with all the evidence. And then at that point, then the court will take a little recess, or a partial recess, so everybody can collect their thoughts and make final.
Well, and again, Your Honor,
Closings.
again, if the defendant chooses to testify.
Then we might have rebuttal.
We might have rebuttal.
We might have rebuttal, that's right. But if the defendant decides not to testify, then we are finished with the evidence, and the court will take a break at that point, and we will go into final arguments then tomorrow morning, all right? If the defendant does testify, or if the defendant makes a decision to present some other evidence, then we'll just have to play it by ear, all right? So that will be the procedure today, and then we need to kind of discuss jury, to have kind of a preliminary jury instruction conference. And is there anything we need to bring up on the record then before we do that, Mr. Jones?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Schnock?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.